a lot of the things that are brought out in this study are suggestions. They're not things that we can be dogmatic about, especially as to predicted times when a lot of these things that have not happened yet are predicted will happen. We know that anyone who has made exact predictions as to times that things will happen have been disappointed and has not come to pass, so we have not realized it at the time we thought it might happen. And that is not to say we should become discouraged. God alone knows the times and the seasons, and He will bring about His purpose in His own time, and any extra time that we have here, we should consider an opportunity to continue our own work in the truth and work out our own salvation. It's an opportunity. The title itself is something that makes us wonder. The last terrible 40 years. What do we mean? What do we mean by that? It is a relative term. And what I mean by that we can see perhaps by looking at a couple of passages. Daniel spoke of a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. At that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. So he speaks of a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And if everything about it that the Bible predicts about it is true, and we know that it is, it will be a terrible time, especially if we are not ready for it personally. If we have not taken the opportunity to work through our probation and make ourselves right with our Creator, it will be a time of great trouble, a terrible time. But if we have taken the time to make the best of our probation, although it will still be a terrible time in respect to the things that will happen in the world, to the great majority of people that are in it, and to the nations. For those that have been called and who have made the best of their calling, it will be a bittersweet time. It is bitter in terms of the things that will be happening to the world, but it will be sweet because we will have put ourselves right in relation to God, and we know that we will come through it okay. Paul spoke of this kind of relativity, and it's indeed spoken of many times in Scriptures. He spoke of the Roman triumph, which was a march, a triumph march that the Romans had a tradition when they were victorious in defeating a nation, such as when they defeated the Jewish nation. They would have a triumph march, and there would be a great procession. And there would be those who were a part of the victors who would be celebrating their victory. And then there would be the captives that would be a part of that procession, who would be in the process of being led in that procession to prison and, most cases, execution. And in that procession there were the priests, the pagan priests, but they would be carrying their incense, and there would be the smell from that. And for those who were victorious, that was a sweet smell, a smell of success and victory. But that same savor, that same smell from the incense was to those who were being led to prison and to death. It was a savor of death unto death. So he says, we are unto God a sweet savor in Christ to them that are saved and in them that perish. There's the two sides to it. To the one we are a savor of death unto death. That is, if we're not among those who have put themselves right with God and made the best of their time, their probation. It is a savor of death unto death. And that word terrible does apply. But to the other, the savor of life unto life. Same savor, but to each meaning a totally different thing. John in Revelations had somewhat the same experience. He was given a little book and was instructed to take it and eat it up, and it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey. So he took the little book out of the angel's hand and ate it up, and it was in his mouth sweet as honey. And it was so because he knew that in that book in which the judgments were written, the things that were coming upon the earth and upon those who had apostatized the truth, there was a sweetness in that for him. He knew that things would be made right by him who said, vengeance is mine, I will repay. But of course, as soon as he had eaten it, his belly was bitter because there was the terrible judgments that would happen in the earth, and he knew that that would be something that would have to be witnessed, and it wouldn't be pleasant. So that puts a little bit of context into this statement, the last terrible 40 years. And it is terrible or it is sweet, depending on which side of the plumb line, if you would have it, that we are on. We read about that tonight, the plumb line. Or this title, we may call it the March of the Rainbowed Angel. It's referring to the same thing. And that comes from Revelations 10. I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. Or it is also titled God's Plan with His Earth. God's plan with this earth. And as we look at that plan and go through it, we're going to look at it from these viewpoints. We're going to look at when. When will God's plan with this earth happen? Where is it to happen? Why is it to happen? Who is it to happen to? Who are the players in this great plan? And the how. How is it to happen? And finally, what does it mean to us? Perhaps that's the greatest question of all, or the final lesson, we might say, that will have the greatest meaning to us is, what does it all mean to us? And this outlines the three parts of this series that we'll be dealing with. The when, the why, the where, and the who we intend to deal with this evening. The how will occupy the next two talks, as well as what does it mean to us. So let's first of all look at the where. Where is the focal point of God's purpose to be unfolded? What is the center point of that? It's a little place in this world, we might say right at the center of the world. And it's a little place called Israel. The nation of Israel. Just a tiny nation in a crescent of crises. But when we look in our Bibles, we find That the whole purpose of God revolves around this people. Whatever the Bible states concerning the international situation at the time of the end, we find the nation of Israel and the city of Jerusalem are the pivot point for international affairs. God declared a long, long time ago in Zechariah 2 and 8, "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, after the glory hath he sent me unto the nations which spoiled you. He that toucheth you toucheth the apple of his eye." We know how sensitive the apple of the eye is. And that is what Israel is in relation to God and his purpose. The nation of Israel existed as a window, as it were, something that we can look through and see how God operates. It's a window to the ways of God for the ultimate benefit to all mankind then and now. And it very quickly became clear to all people and all nations how God reacts to obedience and how he reacts to disobedience. Isaiah 43, 9 and 10. "Let all the nations be gathered together, and let the people be assembled. Who among them can declare this and show us former things? Let them bring forth their witnesses, that they may be justified. Or let them hear and say, it is truth. Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen, that ye may know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me." The nation of Israel existed as a window, as something we can look through and see how God operates and reacts and interacts with people that are doing his will and with people who are not. Zechariah 12, verses 2 and 3. The prophecy is there, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it." It is the focal point. There's something there that just draws the attention of all nations of the earth. Have you noticed that? Just a little block of land, just a fraction of the area of Texas, situated in that little area, all the nations of the earth are focused upon it. Why? This is the reason. Joel 3, verses 1, 2, and 9 and 10. He says, he prophesies, "For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, let the weak say, I am strong." Are we not seeing that today? Is this not being fulfilled before our very eyes? The weak saying, I am strong. Think back to what happened here in the U.S. not that many years ago. Something that was called a day of infamy by Time magazine. Carried out by, you might say, a little motley group of people, very well organized, and carried out against a great nation, a huge nation. Let the weak say, I am strong. And it is something that is still having repercussions in the earth and continues to have repercussions in the earth and probably will indefinitely. There's a prophecy in Isaiah that has to do with this. Their land has also been filled with silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. Their land has also been filled with horses. There is no end to their chariots. Their land has also been filled with idols. They worship the work of their hands, that which their fingers have made. You know, the idol. And that's the earmark of modern society, is the worship of self. The proud look of man will be abased, and the loftiness of man will be humbled, and the Lord alone will be exalted in that day. For the Lord of hosts will have a day of reckoning against everyone who is proud and lofty, and against everyone who is lifted up, that he may be abased, against every high tower, against every fortified wall, against all the ships of Tarshish, of which the U.S. nation is a part of that symbol, and against all the beautiful craft. And the pride of man will be humbled, and the loftiness of man will be abased, and the Lord alone will be exalted in that day. We're not saying that what happened in 9/11, in September 11th of 2001, was a fulfillment of that. But it is a harbinger of it. It's a little bit of a down payment, a little deposit of what is yet to come against every nation like that who exalts itself and worships itself. Let the weak say, I am strong. Okay, let's go to the next one. When? And this is where we say we have to be a little careful because, again, no man knows the day or the hour, but there are certain signs that are happening that give us some indication. God has a timeline. Part of that timeline we can see and we can understand what has happened and what is happening. The part that we still don't know as far as exactly when it's going to happen. We know what is going to happen, there's no doubt about that. But the when still has to be unfolded. There was the period of the Mosaic Israelitish dispensation, spoken of by our Savior in Luke 21, verses 23 to 24. And he speaks of that, and he speaks of the termination of that time, of that Mosaic Israelitish dispensation. There shall be great distress in the land, wrath upon this people. They shall fall by the edge of the sword, shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles. A fulfillment of that was in AD 70. Then there was this time of the Gentiles, this period. And that was prophesied way, way back in Deuteronomy 28. Thou shalt become an astonishment. You know, God gave them some options. He gave them some choices. He said, if you do this, if you will obey me, these are the blessings that will happen to you. And on the other side of that equation, again, you got that plumb line. Said on the other side of that, this is what will happen to you if you don't. You will become an astonishment, a proverb, a byword among all nations where the Lord shall lead you. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth, even unto the other. Your life shall hang in doubt before you. Thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of thy life. And throughout this period, they were in what was called the diaspora, a time of scattering among the nations, and a time of terrible trouble and trials and persecutions, the like of which we have seen not too many years ago in the time of Hitler, when 6 million Jews were put to death in the death camps. Your life will hang in doubt before you. You will fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of your life. But then something took place, and this was an event that happened, we believe, was at least a partial fulfillment. Parts of it may still be going on. But in AD 1967, the year 1967, was a time when the Temple Mount was freed from what was termed the abomination of desolation that had set in upon it. The Jews were once again able to access the Temple Mount. And we feel, we may be wrong, we're suggesting this, that this was at least a partial end to this times of the Gentiles. Until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled, I am with thee, saith the Lord, to save thee. Though I make a full end of all nations, whither I have scattered thee, yet will I not make a full end of you. But I will correct you in measure. That's from Jeremiah 30. Then from Ezekiel, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and will bring them into their own land. Again, is that not something we have seen happen today? I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. That happened through the 19th and 20th centuries. And the zenith of that was AD 1967, when they were able to free the Temple Mount. We know that things have happened there lately that has set things back a little bit. But this is all in the outworking of the great scheme of things in God's plan. We would suggest that we're now in this period of time called the times of restitution of all things. This gap here between the end or the ending of Gentile times and the time when Christ returns. When that happens, when his time is right, and only God knows when that is, he shall send Jesus Christ, whom the heaven must receive, until the times of restitution of all things. When that happens, he will send him back. And there will be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars. This is biblical language for political and ecclesiastical institutions of authority and administration. And upon the earth, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. Again, biblical, symbolical language for the general populations of the earth that are under the political and ecclesiastical administrations. Men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. The powers of all these political and ecclesiastical ruling institutions will be shaken. Then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Power and great glory. This brings us to a very important part of this presentation. Why? Why has God allowed all this to go on? Why is it that He has worked things out in this particular way? Why could He just have not created man in a way that would have necessitated that man be obedient, man and women be obedient to God, and not have gone through all this terrible time of sin and persecution, suffering, and everything that sin brings with it? We feel the answer is contained in Numbers 14 and 21. As truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord. Everything revolves around that. It's not about us. It's about God's glory. Ezekiel 39, so will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel. I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore, and the heathen shall know that I am Yahweh, the Holy One in Israel. I will set my glory among the heathen, and all the heathen shall see my judgment that I have executed, and my hand that I have laid upon them. Thus will I magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. And this is the first of quite a few quotes that I'll be doing from the article, the last terrible 40 years, because I just feel that there's no way that I can say it any better. Brother Crocott says, think of what is involved in pulling down all man's ugly buildings, demolishing to the ground all his crowded and vice-ridden cities, cleaning off the face of God's earth all man's rubbishy edifices and constructions, and building an entirely new, permanent, sound social fabric in harmony with nature and with the mind of God. Even ignorant man himself is suddenly realizing that he is approaching the dead end of environmental disaster and all the destructively blind progress and civilization that he has been so obsessed in and so proud of. Think of the pollution problem. Can this be taken into the millennium? All the works of ignorant and foolish man must be swept away, demolished, scraped to the foundation. The kingdom in its transitional millennial form is to be built for cleanliness and health and 1,000 years duration. How could any of man's flimsy, rickety, tinker toy productions have a place in that? For even now, man's proudest works are so quickly obsolete and superseded. And is this not so true? You know, the closer we look at things of God's creation, the more beautiful it appears. And I don't care how close you get to it, how great a magnifying glass you would look, or a telescope, if it's the universe, or whatever it is. It just appears more beautiful the closer you look at it. With man's things, the closer you examine it, the more flaws you find. There's no comparison. The earth is full of idols, human memorials, churches, temples, mosques, synagogues. How could all these polluted things stand in God's glorious kingdom of purity and wisdom and holiness? There must be a thorough and drastic cleansing and purging of the earth itself and of the whole human race. So let's look at the who. Who are the players in this program of God's purpose? Bible predictions describe at the end of time, there's the existence of two opposite and antagonistic world powers that will result in a final confrontation such as the world has never before witnessed. The Bible makes reference to them as the north and the south. And of course, these directions are relative to the land of Israel. We see this little blinking dot again in the center of the map. So these terms north and south have relative reference to that position, the location, which is where the prediction originated. And as we go through this, I'm just going to put a little bit of a legend on here just to help understand some of the colors that we'll be using and what they have reference to. We've used blue to indicate areas where it indicates the position of Israel and the Jews, such as we have their land here, the little strip of land of Palestine colored in blue. We've used yellow to indicate Christ and the saints, the overspreading glory of Yahweh. We've used a green to indicate the King of the South, and a black to indicate the King of the North. And of course, the colors in solid are indicated in the circles, and the oblong shapes indicate this color as they are rather transparent, and will show the map behind it. We also have the icon legend. These will be some of the things that will be shown in this presentation. The tank in blue will symbolize the Jews in battle array. Similarly, the green tank will indicate the King of the South in battle array. The black will indicate the King of the North in battle array. A symbol in the shape of a sun, yellow sun, will indicate the activity of Christ and the saints, or the rainbowed angel. The arrows, of course, in the same color will indicate the direction of movement of each. And then there will be, in one or two places, a kind of a mixture of the black and the gray, indicating the believers who have yet to be judged before they are glorified. A mixture of truth and the flesh, which has yet to be purified. And there will be explosion scenes, the scenes of battle or confrontation in red. So these are some of the things that PowerPoint has allowed us to do to make this a bit of a dramatization. And may be referring to it later as we go through it. But in any case, there we have the arrows, the north and the south, relative to that little land of Israel. And we're going to use passages from Daniel and from Ezekiel. Daniel 11 speaks of, at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. And at that time many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. That is the prophecy from Daniel 11 verse 40 and chapter 12 verses 1 and 2. Now it speaks of the king of the south and the king of the north both pushing against him. And the him would be indicative of the occupant of this area of the land of Israel relative to the positions of the north and the south. Originally this had reference to two kings in the land, the two nations in the land back in the time of Daniel. Shortly afterwards, the Seleucids and the Ptolemies. They were the king of the north, the king of the south. And their activities was a back and forth pushing at each other in reference to the land of Israel They were pushing back and forth to get possession and occupation of that land, just as the nations of the world are doing today. And these powers have migrated and transformed through various nations, but they're always in reference to the nations that occupy these same basic territories throughout the years. They're always referred to as the King of the North and the King of the South. So we've tried to keep that in mind as we go through this. So first of all, let's look at who is the King of the North. Here's where we go to Ezekiel 38. The word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog. Now, Gog describes a great latter-day leader. It's not really a proper name of a person, but it's a designation of a position. It's the one at the top. And I believe we read in our readings today, it was brought out from the Septuagint, that it was a reference to a king, and it was called Gog. And it is, again, it's the one at the top, the one who has power, the one who has control. It's the head of a great alliance or confederacy of nations representing all the great historical world empires that have ever existed in the earth. That is the reference of this particular prophecy in Ezekiel 38, because he will indicate all the nations that he's referring to. We don't have to guess at this. This is really a no-brainer, because it's all explained for us. So, set thy face against Gog of the land of Magog. Now, in Strong's Hebrew Dictionary, it indicates to us that this was a son of Japheth, and also a barbarous northern region. The land of Magog had relation to ancient Scythians who spread westward along the banks of the Danube, occupied areas of Central Europe, and it's more or less represented to us today by present-day Germany and closely surrounding nations. Then there was also, we just have referred this, we were going to put this into a better area. Before we just had a rough idea there. Now we've indicated the nations as they would be represented today. So we'll keep that posted in front of us. And we'll notice that it is in that black color, indicating, again, the representative nations of the north. And the prophecy goes on, the chief prince. Again, going to Strong's Dictionary, it is Rosh, from an unused root apparently meaning to shake. It has reference to the head. It has reference to, it has been translated as band, beginning, captain, chief, a king or sheik, also a rising mist. So this word, in the language in which the Bible was written, in the Hebrew, is Rosh, and it is the ancient form of Rus, and from that we have the name Russia. This being so, we have this incredible phenomenon then that directly named in the Bible is Russia in relation to God's predictions. Chief prince of Meshech. Another word having great meaning. Meshech. Descendants of Japheth, the son of Noah, after the flood settled in the region north of Persia or north of Iran, from whom descended the Muscovites. They migrated to the banks of the Moskva River, which was named after them. And this later became the site and namesake of the city Moscow. Tubal, the next one is named there. What's the etymology of Tubal? Where did it come from? Again, another son of Japheth, whose descendants migrated north to the regions of present-day Russia. There's one common denominator running through this, is there not? Russia. We hear it mentioned over and over again. The river Tobol was named after them, and on that river is situated the great eastern metropolis of northwest Siberia. And it is the city of Tobolsk. Tobolsk. And we've indicated on the map where that is located. Then we go to some other nations that are named. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. Persia occupied at one time a large area including Iraq and Iran. Ethiopia and Libya point to much the same areas now as they did then. And it says with them, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. And this tells us that at the time of the fulfillment of this Bible prediction, that these countries, Iraq, Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya, will be aligned with the Russian power. With them. Gomer and all his bands. Josephus identifies these with the Galatians, or the Gauls, who migrated west to the areas of France and Holland and Belgium and all those countries in that particular part of Europe. Then the house of Togarmah, of the north quarters. This points to the area of Turkey. It's from the same locality as Gomer, but instead of going westward with their brethren, they diffused themselves over the north quarter. And again, north is relative to the area of Judea. So the north quarter, north of Judea. Then the next part of that passage is many people with thee. Many people with thee. We remember that Nebuchadnezzar's image had feet of iron and clay. It had 10 toes. And this indicated a power that was made up of 10 national portions or components in the region of where the image was situated. So does this not indicate to us, and we suggest that it does, it indicates to us the European Economic Community, the EU. This includes many small nations in addition to France and Spain and Germany and all the others that are situated throughout that area, and comprehends all the others that have been named, plus all these nations that weren't named. And it fills in the picture, does it not? This whole area of Asia and Europe, right down to the areas just north of the land, north and east of the land of Israel, and also south of it. So they're surrounded. Then we come to another term, the king of the south. Where does this come from and what does it mean? It's also named in that same chapter, in Ezekiel 38. It goes on. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all the young lions thereof. Now Sheba and Dedan occupied parts of the Arabian Peninsula in olden times of Ezekiel and prior to that. Tarshish with all the young lions thereof. Now Tarshish was a more complex term. And it was a merchant marine superpower in the times of the Bible. It was identified with the areas around Gibraltar, which is over here in the area just around Spain, India, and also eventually Great Britain. The young lions, it says, with all the young lions thereof, would also indicate the British Commonwealth of Nations and the independent countries that have branched out from her. And this would also comprehend the U.S., Australia, and any of the other nations that Commonwealth had comprehended. And whether it had broke off from it, whatever it has become at this point is really doesn't matter. It goes to where it originated, much like the European Union. It really doesn't matter whether it has, and I'm talking here in reference to the European Union, we know that it has many more than 10 countries involved right now. Brother Thomas had made the point that that is of no consequence. What is a consequence is what existed at the time of its formation, and it was 10, and that identified it with the 10 toes. And very similar with the merchants of Tarshish. It has to do with its origin. And that, brothers and sisters, brings us to the end of this first part. We have identified the who, the how, not the how, the who, the where, the when, and we'll be getting to the how. We've identified the why. Probably the most important thing that we've identified this evening is the why. And we must remember always that it is to give God the glory that is due to his name and to unfold it to the eyes of all nations around the world.